I hate the feeling of being alone. This is something that I guess kind of recently came up for me. Um, to be honest with you, this past month has been pretty busy, and among one of those things that kind of contributed to me being busy was driving to a concert. More specifically, since it's already happened, I went to the Kid Leroy concert in Philly. And mind you, it was a pretty long drive because I also had to pick up my brother, and his college was about a couple hours away. So altogether, I ended up driving about 1,200 miles, which you can imagine it's not an easy trip. I was definitely able to get it done within a day, at least each one way. But regardless, why I'm kind of saying all of this is because a situation kind of arose when I was actually driving back from the concert in Philly, and I was going back home, and I kid you not, I was 90 minutes away from my apartment, and all of a sudden, uh, there's a pothole. And potholes are very common in the tri-state area if you're not familiar. And there was a pothole that I knew existed because I've passed by this pothole before, but I wasn't really consciously thinking about it. I wasn't consciously aware. And so what ended up happening was, well, I noticed it last minute and I tried to react, tried to get away, so to speak, from the pothole. And I ended up screwing up my front right tire, and basically it went flat. I had to stop by the nearby gas station. And mind you, I don't have any AAA coverage. I don't have any, any of those services, such as the one that Geico offers, for example, because Geico's my insurance. And I didn't pay the extra money for that because I guess, to be honest with you, I just don't really drive that much. For work, for commute, it's like a 20-minute drive one way. Um, Not super terrible, right? And so, realistically, if I ever got stuck anywhere, I could call a fair amount of people, coworkers, for example, and they would probably be able to help me, right? But anyways, yeah, that's kind of a bit of a tangent. But anyways, I I ended up having to stop by a gas station, just about 90 minutes away from where I lived, and uh, because I didn't have any of that coverage, and because I didn't really know the area, my service was also extremely bad. I didn't have any, I was in a very countryside sort of area, so my service was extremely terrible. Did not have service at all. I ended up coming up to a guy, and I basically asked him, "Hey, do you have like something that I can use to, um, put this jack up?" Because with my car, it came with a jack, but it's a manual jack that you have to kind of. It's very unintuitive. Where I kind of had to take a wrench in and out of the two holes that would essentially kind of, uh, you know, turn the jack, so to speak, so we could raise the height essentially. And I asked the person for that. Um, and luckily enough, the guy was super sweet and helped me actually change the tire itself. Had a bit of trouble kind of getting the tire off because the heat adhesion. It was very it was like a heat cohesion, I think was what it was called, where essentially because I've been driving for so long, of course, generates heat um, around the tires, around the rims, and so um, we had some trouble getting the tire off, but after a while we got it off. Regardless of that fact, the whole idea, the whole reason why I'm even explaining this story is because after that moment, I truly I felt two different things. Number one was, um, if I was in any other country, and I have lived and visited in a fair amount of countries. If I was in a different country, I don't think I would have had the same amount of help as I did um, just around then. You know, in many other countries, specifically, when I lived in Hong Kong for a little bit, everyone kind of minds their own business. Um, and so I've also kind of lived in New York City for a little bit. And again, it's very hard to find people that would really give a shit, realistically. And it's nothing against those people, but it's just because it's the nature of it. It's the nature of the location, right? I was in a very countryside sort of area, so I was grateful that those people. I even offered the guy who helped me change my tire if he wanted, I could buy him something. I was going to pay him, and he was like, no, completely fine with it. He even gave me the wrench that kind of um, helped get the jack up. But regardless of that fact, I was super fortunate that I came across the right person, right time. The second thing that I kind of thought about was how alone I really was. Um, for context, and I never really discussed this too often, but I live alone, and I have been for about the past 6 months, I would say. I did used to live with my girlfriend for a little bit. There was nothing that was inherently wrong with our. I mean, we're still dating, but it's very much almost long distance, so to speak. I mean, she's like 5 hours away from me at this point, and I don't know. I mean, that's a full day's trip, I would say. Give or take. Um, but without getting into too much of the specifics, I don't live with my girlfriend anymore, and my family lives in a completely separate state, almost 900 miles away from me. And I think in that moment, oh, and I guess with friends, I should reiterate, with friends, everyone is in a place that I just don't live in, unfortunately. They're closer to major cities, and unfortunately, I am not as of this moment. Um, so regardless, I think what kind of started from, a feeling of a sense of, hey, I'm independent, I'm making my own path, I'm trailblazing, slowly kind of turned into a sort of thought process of, holy shit, I'm really alone. And I do want to kind of put this out there that, to be honest with you, I'm still working through a lot of these issues. I think I'm using this more of a rant than, like one of my other videos where I'm very much giving advice or, my experience and what I've learned from it and etc., right? In this case, this is an active battle that I have been dealing with for months, years, even, I would even say. I would say ever since I was a kid, a kid meaning, in elementary school, middle school, whatever your standard of a kid is. Um, whatever whatever school I went to, right? Ever since fifth grade, I would say, I've always had someone. I've always relied on someone. Um, whether that be in a relationship, I think I've always been in a relationship. It feels like. I think the longest stint in which I did not have anyone that I called my girlfriend was maybe a year. And a year can be long to some of you guys, but a year can also be considered short. And in my opinion, I think I considered that a pretty short amount of time. Granted, that was also during high school, so a year back then was maybe longer, and from that perspective. But looking back on it, I think a year is probably uh, not as long, I think, as what some other people may consider it. But regardless, without getting into too much of the subjectivity, uh, I've never been alone. And if it wasn't a relationship, it was me relying on my family, on my parents to some extent. And I think I've always bothered my parents with that sort of mindset, with that sort of thing. I always ask them for something. I always want their opinion on something. I always ask them questions. What do they want me to do and stuff like that. So I never really had the chance, I guess, in middle school and maybe a little bit of high school to really be alone. And as I kind of grew up going into college, I was alone from the fact that I was making new friends, but I was also away from the familiarity, from my family. And then over time, I used the familiarity of my college friends and then now girlfriend, and kind of in a way created a sort of not family, but a way for me to cope with being away from family, with being alone. And now with this job where I am in a fairly isolated region, fairly isolated city, you know, I think in the beginning, I kind of forced, maybe not forced, but I kind of, pleaded with my girlfriend to live with me because I wanted to, I just didn't want to be alone, to be honest with you. Um, then some things came up, personal things came up. She couldn't really stay with me anymore, and I'm now on month 6 of being alone, completely. I mean, other than coworkers, I guess, but I'm not sure if many of you consider coworkers to, to be friends or to be like your close circle, I guess. I don't know. But regardless of that fact, I just don't have my circle near me. I don't have family, I don't have friends, and my girlfriend is not really near me, you know. I would say she's probably the closest in terms of proximity, 5 hours away. But regardless, I am alone. And I guess I'm coming on here to kind of rant about it and say this fucking sucks. Straight up, it sucks. It's terrible. On the one hand, I try to be delusional, I guess, for myself. I try to kind of think to myself, me being alone and me doing this on my own, right? For example, getting the flat and changing the tire, right? Um, Paying for a new set of tires and paying for rent and basically doing the adult life, so to speak, right, on my own without anyone. I try to kind of have this sort of delusion for myself where I'm okay with it, and that it builds character and that this is all going to be worth it in the end. But on the other side, I hate it, and to be honest, I don't know how to really deal with it. So I think the best way for me to deal with it is to come on here and rant about it realistically. Now, am I gonna find a way around it? Maybe. I have goals, I have aspirations, and I try to focus on that. I also have hobbies. I play the guitar, I play video games. Um, I'm studying for quant, right? My goal is to possibly be in a tri-city area, right? In a large major city of some sort. But yeah, like for right now, I guess it kind of just sucks. And I always try to think of the long term, you know, like hey, it's gonna be okay, right? It sucks, it's terrible right now, but it's gonna be okay. You got to think about 2 years, 3 years in the future. But that's not the point. Well, I guess what I'm trying to get out, off my chest, and what I'm trying to say is, I hate being alone. And sometimes I get upset. Sometimes, maybe not upset, meaning sometimes I should probably differentiate those two. I get upset in two different ways. Um, on the one hand, I feel upset in the way of sadness, loneliness, and I try to use other things to distract me. Um, I would say more recently, and I'm not very proud of this, more recently I've been using TikTok and Instagram Reels to kind of cope with it. And it's not a good way to cope with it. And I'm realizing that now. I mean, I did that for the past couple of days, so it's not like been a month or something like that where I've been doing that, or a couple of months. It's very recent, and I'm trying to get out of that habit. But regardless, it still sucks, you know. Um, so that's the one way, right? Sadness. The other way, the other aspect to being upset is anger. You know, Um, Anger at myself, I think, first and foremost. Why didn't I get a better job that I could be closer to my girlfriend or close to my family or close to my friends? You know, maybe I wasn't enough for something, right? Or sometimes I get angry, and I think I've mentioned this in past videos. Sometimes I get angry at the fact that, I had two offers and both of them were rescinded. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking back to those two offers, and I'm like, holy shit, fuck that company or fuck those companies, you know? Like I absolutely hate it, and I hate those companies, and I'm like, I'm never gonna apply for them ever again because of what they did, blah blah blah. Being petty and shit like that, right? And then there's some anger, on the other end. Um, a little bit on my parents, and to be honest, I don't think it's fair to them because I think they've always just wanted something that was good for me. And one of those things that they always wanted for me to do was to be independent and to create my own path and to trailblaze. So I don't think it's fair to be upset at them or to be angry at them, but there are times where, humans are not always rational, right? And there are times where I do think about like the fact of, why did they push me away, right? Why did they make me, go independent or force me to be independent? Um, you know, but at the same time I understand that there is a benefit to it, right? Um, and at some point, we do have to kind of grow up to become adults, right? We can't live with our parents forever. Um, at least that was my parents' philosophy. But yeah, no, I mean, there's some anger there. And then I also have some anger with my girlfriend, right? And again, it's not fair to her. It's not fair to project that onto other people. It really isn't. But there are times where I do feel angry because, I'm like, you lived with me for a couple of months and then you just left, you know? And sometimes it makes me think like, how long do I have to do this, right? Um, there are times where my brain kind of not rationalizes this, but my brain kind of thinks, hey, you know, I moved up here, maybe not close to my girlfriend, but I moved up here and I'm only 5 hours away. I say only, of course, only 5 hours. That 5 hours is a pretty long time. But I kind of create this sort of narrative in my head of like, I'm only 5 hours away. Why can't, you come visit, or why can't you live with me, blah blah blah, this and that. Um, and like I said, I think humans are not rational, and the thoughts that I have are definitely not, you know, absolute, right? Like, I don't think it's any one person's fault. I think that's just how life works. There are going to be days, there are going to be times where things are just not going to work in your favor. And to be honest, I think I just kind of have to come to terms with that. On the other hand, it is hard to ignore. And to be honest, there are times where I just want to fucking give up, you know? uh, which I think is kind of it may be a little bit shocking for some of you guys listening to this channel. If you've seen other videos, I'm very much like gung ho on all the positive and motivating speeches. Like it is worth it. You can do it. Blah blah blah. This and that. But look, I'm human too, and uh, there are times where I experience the same things that you guys may experience, right? The same feelings: anger, sadness, loneliness. Um, you know, uh, Thinking to the past and being like, maybe I should have changed this, maybe you should have changed that. But at the end of the day, you can't change it, right? That's just how life works. You know, there are things you can change, there are things you can't change, right? Some things are in your control, other things are not. And so I think this is just me wanting to put that out there, kind of express it. Um, from an emotional standpoint, I think I kind of just wanted to rant about that. Whether you guys listen to it or not. I won't blame me if you won't, because this is probably a more negative video than I'm kind of used to. But yeah, um, just wanted to come on here and basically say life alone fucking sucks. I'm trying to make the best of it. I really am. But, there are times where I just want to give up, and I just want to curl into a ball and do nothing and leech off my parents for the rest of for the rest of the day, rest of my years, you know. Like there are times where I'm just like, fuck it, bro. I'm gonna go back and live with them, you know. I don't wanna be up here anymore. I don't wanna live in this area anymore, where I'm just so isolated and so far. And unfortunately, I'm working hard for a promotion, and I'm working hard for, to possibly get the flexibility of moving wherever I want to be, because right now my job is currently very client specific and not necessarily a thing that I can, move freely in. But that takes time, and I think I'm getting impatient. So I am looking around for other places to work at, that have more flexibility or are closer to where I would desire to be. Um, but that in and of itself kind of causes some other situations, some other things that I am thinking about, such as what I really want to do with my life, and whether moving for the sake of being closer to my girlfriend may be worth it, I guess. As bad as that sounds, but that's kind of the best way I can really put that, you know. Um, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I'm struggling to kind of think about those sort of things, right? Do I want to do I want to be in a major city? Yeah, probably for the time being. Um, would I want to be closer to family? Absolutely. Can I find a compromise between these two? I'm not sure yet, to be honest with you. But hey, we just keep trucking, right? We keep going. Um, and maybe at some point I'll figure out, you know, a solution to all of this. So we'll see. But regardless, if you made it this far to the video, I appreciate it. Appreciate all of the love and support in the past couple of videos. I know I've been gone for about a month. Like I said, very busy. What I will say is I finally got a new PC. So very excited, extremely excited to play some different games on here for the commentary channel, and we've already kind of tested it out on my Twitch stream. So had a lot of fun playing some Cyberpunk and Apex and all these other games that I probably would not have been able to really stream comfortably or at all, really, on my old laptop. So uh, definitely a huge upgrade, and I'm very excited. I'm very happy. So, um, anyways, thank you for listening. Till the next one.